Hey everybody, this is my final project presentation on my change initiative. So just a little introduction. So the change initiative undertaken, it was really to determine, um, how the implementation of the lead therapist position uh, would improve things like morale, educational opportunities within our department at UMass Memorial Medical Center. The lead therapist position was implemented at both campuses, the university and the memorial campuses. The goal was to have three lead therapists on day shift, so 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and three on night shift. Ultimately, at the memorial campus, there were only two people that filled the positions on days, and then the three on night shift were filled. So the whole idea of this lead therapist, they were supposed to help with or kind of manage stuff like staffing assignments, um, educational opportunities. So like they were discussing like monthly having kind of a piece of equipment every month, especially kind of more so some of the less frequently used things like nitric oxide or jet ventilator, high frequency oscillator, etc. Um, so that was kind of their role that they were supposed to take on. And in doing so, they were never supposed to have a full on assignment. They were supposed to have a light assignment. That way they could, take care of the other things that they were intended to take care of. So obviously, like so many of us have experienced, soon after the position was implemented, COVID-19 hit, and kind of everything went to the wayside. The ability to have in-person meetings, for things like educational opportunities was obviously put on hold because they didn't want, group gatherings and all that stuff to take place just because of the spread of COVID. Um, and then coming out of the second wave of COVID, the hospital really kind of came down hard on our department in terms of budget. The first wave, it was like you guys could have everything and anything. They bought a bunch of extra equipment, got their hands on extra ventilators, you name it, brought in travelers. The second wave, it wasn't so much, there weren't really any travelers, but it was like, all hands on deck, overtime, let's really staff up as much as possible on these shifts, etc. And then after the second wave, coming out of that, it was, well, so your department's over budget and overstaffed by, I think it was 14 FTEs between both campuses. I think it was something like 6 or 4 on the Memorial campus where I worked, and it was either 8 or 10 um, on at the university campus. So this led to a lot of changes within the department, which really led to running with the bare minimum staffing. Um, they implemented a staffing rubric, which was based on they assigned a point value for different things, like ventilator, vent check, ABG draw, nebulizer treatments, that kind of stuff. And over the weeks after this was implemented, that kind of really turned into, it felt like kind of things were more taken away. Like, oh, well, if they're on a ventilator and they get nebulizer treatments, they can't be counted as a nebulizer treatment because they're on a ventilator and have an aerogen, despite the fact that we were still having to go in, do a full patient assessment, pre and post breath sounds, etc. We couldn't count, that for a nebulizer treatment and stuff. But yeah. So and then it was if it said on night shift, it totaled out to be 5.5 staff. We would always round up. Then it turned into, well, you know what? Actually, we're gonna round down. So, if it was 5.1 before, we would round up to 6. But now, if it was 5.1, we round down to 5. So yeah, so this led to the leads not having a light assignment. they were taking full assignments, sometimes cut being, back up to the NICU, which, mind you, was a 50-bed NICU, back up to that, while having, an adult ICU, or while having patient floors to cover, depending on how short we were. So yeah, so it led to a lot of problems. So the structure of our department, we had the director who was at split time between both campuses on days. So one, kind of alternate days between the two campuses. We had a manager who also was on days and split time between both campuses. And it was kind of weird because, as I've mentioned before in my other presentations, there was kind of like, this person was a day shift supervisor before and was given this manager role. And they really, kind of just like vying for power between the two here. You really couldn't distinguish if, just from the outside looking in, who was who as far as like role goes. But even though we're on both splitting times between both campuses, they were in a lot of meetings and stuff like that. So yes, they were there, but never there in the sense of like, oh geez, you guys are shorthand, let me throw all my scrubs and get in there and help you out. We also had two supervisors who were on evenings, and they also alternated days between the two campuses. And, they were there from 1 p.m. till 10 p.m. So, excuse me, they were there from 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. They did 4 10-hour days. So there was one day in the week that they, each campus did not have a evening supervisor on. And then on day shift, we had 2 lead therapists. And as I mentioned, on night shift, we had 3 lead therapists, and you had your staff RTs. So problems encountered. As I mentioned before, COVID put a hold on education opportunities due to no group meetings. The budget crackdowns led to, as I said, the development of that staffing rubric. And this led to shifts running with absolute bare minimum staff and, very, very, very heavy workloads. And this led to staff burnout. It was at an all-time high. And morale really was at an all-time low. And, solutions to combat the budget and staffing issues, while they were devised, just seemed like there was very little effort by the management for implementation. We had a lot of group meetings between staff, the leads, management, and upper hospital management. They were called unit-based teams, and it was with the union as well. And we devised things that we worked with the budget people, and actually came up with a huge list of additional items that we could actually physically bill for, which were monetary charges for like supplies like CPAP, BiPAP masks, etc. And we also came up with additional lists of stuff that we had added into Epic for productivity charges, to show just how much work that we were actually doing. But, you would think that we had these fixes for this stuff, and nothing really came of it. We got this list devised, but then there was never anything from management that was sent out, or any like kind of training initiative to get all the staff on the same page. Like, geez, we came up with all this stuff, and now there is, nothing as far as, hey, everybody, you need to make sure you're putting in for this charge or this productivity charge to make our numbers look better. And, obviously, if that was the big problem, they never did anything to really kind of address that, or spread the word about, hey, we have all this extra stuff that can add to help fix the issue. So some potential remedies to fix the problems. Quote from Bowman and Deal: most companies claim to value their people, but fewer live up to those words. Um, it would go a long way for the hospital to make their staff feel valued. Not so much just saying that oh, thank you for, you know, doing what you're doing, but just actually, physically kind of go above and beyond out of their way to, make us feel like we were valued. There's a lot of things like, they implemented, um, bonuses, critical staffing pay bonuses for nurses like in the ICUs during COVID. And did the respiratory department get them? No. We found out about them, and the union and stuff went to bat for us. And the hospital said, "Oh well, we will revisit it," and that led to, okay, yeah, we'll give it to them. But by then, like, it was going on for like another like week or two, so we got it for a week when nursing got it for a couple months. Um, utilizing the symbolic frame more. The symbolic frame is meant to address people's needs for a sense of purpose and meaning in their work. It's used to inspire people by making the direction of the organization feel significant, and it's done through creating motivating vision and recognizing superb performance through celebration. Again, there was just nothing there to motivate the staff to go above and beyond, and there was like no recognition for going above and beyond. Like I said, there's a lot of staff that devoted time to, outside of work, unpaid for these UBT meetings to come up with fixes, and nothing came of it. When a leader knows the impact that they can have on those around them, make decisions like allocating resources, etc., might not have such a negative impact on the staff. If the leader can walk the walk, not just be resolute in their decision making, they can get those around them from different groups to work together and get on the board of the plan. So this is really important to, just kind of the management. Like I said, it's one thing being short-staffed and, just saying, well, just try your best, because that's what, unfortunately, a lot of people heard. But to actually get out there and say, throw a pair of scrubs on and actually, help out when they're short-staffed, and then you see that and you think, geez, okay, you know what, yeah, you know what, we're short-staffed, we're going through this, but they're kind of in the trenches going through this with us too. So I think, one of the things, another fix would be really restructuring of the department. Um, and this kind of goes back here to the structural frame. And, Mintzberg's divisional organization, states that, if an organization has different business units, you typically see a divisional structure, central headquarters, which would be the director, and they support a number of autonomous units, which would be the Memorial and University campus. And those units make their own decisions and, have their own unique structures. And this allows the managers, which would be the supervisors, to maintain more control and accountability than in a machine structure. And the day-to-day decision making would be decentralized, and allows for the director to focus on the big picture, which is kind of, this budget issues, whatever other things, like the meetings with the upper management, etc. And they could, the supervisors at each hospital could just run the day-to-day operations there, and kind of not have to take part in and be at all these meetings like the supervisors and managers were currently. So this would be kind of the restructure here that I would recommend. You would have that director, which would be like the HQ role. They have the techno structure to support them, which would be the finance, risk management, and they have the support staff like environmental services, biomed, educators, etc. And then each campus would have a night, evenings, and day supervisor, and they would, be there, to have that leadership presence, handle education, handle the, comings and goings in that hospital itself, and not be bouncing between both entities, because they're really two separate entities. The university campus was larger, had the level 1 trauma. The Memorial campus, while a little bit smaller, still got a lot of critical patients, but we also had the level 3 NICU, had the NICU transport team, etc. So it was very different entities. And then you would have your staff, your therapists, your 7A to 7P, and your 7P to 7A therapists. And this would just really eliminate that manager, and it would eliminate the need for the lead therapist as well. So, success of the initiative. It's really hard to say there were any successes. Like I said, the actual lead therapist was never what they were intended to do. So there was that. You had multiple staff leave the department due to underlying issues. Myself being one of them, I ended up leaving and took a job elsewhere, which was actually kind of a blessing in disguise. And then you had multiple lead therapists step down from their position just because, again, they weren't what the job was. So, they just were very unhappy, and even though they were getting paid more, they just, forsaken that extra pay to go back to just being a staff RT because it just wasn't worth it. So the conclusion, while, the idea of the lead therapist initially seemed to be a good idea, ultimately, there were just too many factors that worked against it, and it did not allow for it to really take on the role that it was intended for. Ultimately, I think from a structural frame standpoint, restructuring of the department would really be beneficial, and maybe a change of leadership might be helpful in a sense, and symbolically, just kind of being that motivational force for the staff, to get on board with the direction that things, where they want to take things. And so there are my references. I apologize for kind of going a little over. It's a lot of info to fit in within 15 minutes, but I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much, and happy holidays.